first time in years, it appeared that a bipartisan agreement on gun reform was possible. 10 Republicans agreed to a framework, and even Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell expressed support. But some senators departed Capitol Hill this week frustrated with negotiations, and we still haven't seen the text of a bill. Joining us now from Utah, Senator Mike Lee, also the author of the book, Saving 9. Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you.
All right, let's start. I want to put up on the screen here some of the framework for the gun legislation proposal. We don't have text yet, but it talks about funding mental health services, enhanced reviews for buyers, background checks on 18 to 21. Things for school resources. There are also issues about red flag laws. I know that's one of the things that you and some other Republicans have been concerned about. But this is what the framework said when they announced it. It said it will help ensure deadly weapons are kept out of the hands of individuals whom a court has determined to be a significant danger to themselves or others, consistent with state and federal due process and constitutional protection. So I hear the mention there of a court proceeding first and a recognition of due process. Can you support that?
Yeah, look, most of those things sound unobjectionable. The issue that we have here is that we don't have a bill. That's why I was surprised when last week, about a week ago, when you had this gang of 20 emerged saying, we have a deal. We started expecting to see a bill. Now, I personally refuse to indicate whether or how I will vote on a bill until after I've seen the text, because there are a lot of things that can go wrong in legislation. I kept asking to see text, and it became apparent they didn't have a bill. In fact, they don't have a deal at all. What they had was agreement on a series of very broad promises. Now, I know there's some bill text that's probably been written, but on the most contentious, controversial, potentially impactful provisions, there is no language. Without that language, you can't ascertain whether it's okay. But Shannon, the important thing here is we've got to be careful whenever something like this happens that we not legislate under the heat of the moment, under great emotion, without looking at the text and figuring out what we're doing. And we need to be careful that we not punish law-abiding Americans for the wrongs carried out by the criminally minded and the insane.
So Fox News polling shows that there is a lot of strength behind some of these proposals at this point. Some of these proposals, background checks for guns, which by and large most of them are background checked before you do a purchase. 88%, though, moving the legal age for an assault rifle purchase is at 82%. Flagging for people who are a danger to themselves or others, those red flag laws, 81%, and banning assault weapons, 63%. There is a lot of momentum, at least among the public sphere, for doing this. Are you out of step with your constituents?
Okay, so first of all, what's important is that we look out for the rights of constituents. Constituents are asked poll questions. They're not asked questions about specific language within legislative text. It's the job of the lawmaker to look out for the interest and the rights of the law-abiding citizens they represent. And so with each of those provisions, I understand how they could get high popularity ratings when they don't define them. For example, you talk about banning assault weapons. There is no universal definition of what an assault rifle is. Very often the true distinction, it really depends on whether the stock pieces of the gun are made of wood or of plastic or of composite. And so the text does matter here. Because it's that text that will determine whether we're intruding unduly on the rights of the American law-abiding citizen, and doing so in a way that would actually deter violent criminal behavior.
Yeah, I want to ask you, you referenced this a little bit earlier, some of the inner workings of these conversations about this. Axios is reporting it this way, saying essentially Senator John Cornyn, who is the lead Republican on these negotiations, they said that one senator called it, quote, shut up and vote is what Republicans have been told to do. Axios also reported that you numerous times asked for more details, that you were rebuffed. And then they go on to quote a Cornyn aide who says this: he's been talking to and answering questions one-on-one from multiple of these members. He or our staff has been in particularly close contact with Crapo and Lee. So what is the deal? Are you getting answers to your questions? Yes or no? Do you think this internal dialogue with the GOP may kill the whole thing?
No, not getting answers to my questions, not at all. Now, Senator Cornyn and others have been sincere in reaching out to us and having conversations, but I still have yet to see bill text. I still have yet to have any of my questions dealing with the details of what the provision would do answered. You know, it's one thing, Shannon, if they can identify with reasonable particularity what the provisions will do. They haven't even been able to do that. And that's what concerns me, is that this gang of 20 emerged saying we've got a deal. There was no bill. There still is no deal. And yet we continue to be asked by colleagues, by constituents, by reporters, are you supporting the bill? Just as a number of senators are rushing to sign on to the bill, to say they support the bill when it doesn't exist. This is a very dangerous way to legislate.
Well, and
behind closed doors, you need the transparency of a public conversation with bill text in front of you.
Especially on an issue this big. Okay, I want to move to another top headline issue. The January 6th hearings continue to go on. What we heard this week is that the president had a number of his advisors tell him there was not enough evidence of fraud to change the election results to be in his favor for 2020. The president speaking out on that, the former president this weekend, here's what he said.
What you're seeing is a complete and total lie. It's a complete and total fraud.
All right, that's his take on it. Your own text messages have come up with respect to Mark Meadows. They've been highlighted. Here's what the Salt Lake Tribune said about that. Their headline, quote, new court filings raise questions about Senator Mike Lee's involvement in attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Your response?
Well, first of all, look, I knew how bad Joe Biden would be as president. I knew what a disaster he would be in the Oval Office. And there was some uncertainty in the wake of the election. As we approached the end of December, there were rumors that continued to circulate suggesting that some states were going to be reallocating, withdrawing and reallocating their electoral votes. Because Congress has a role in that, and I as a senator would be required to certify those, I wanted to find out. So I communicated with Mark Meadows to try to find out whether the rumors were true. I couldn't get answers, so I reached out to state lawmakers in various states, not trying to influence anyone, simply trying to find out whether the rumors were true. The rumors weren't true. No state had any intention of withdrawing its slate of electoral votes, and that made it an easy decision on my part to vote to certify the results of the election.
Has the committee asked to talk to you in the form of a deposition or otherwise, and would you sit down with them?
No, they haven't.
Would you sit down with them if they did?
Oh, sure. Look, I'd always be willing to talk if they want to talk.
Okay, let's talk about one of our mutually loved issues out there, which is the Supreme Court. You clerked there. I just cover it and enjoy doing that. We're awaiting this decision. Your former boss, Justice Alito, the leaked opinion draft, if it holds true, will overturn Roe v. Wade. Listen, there have been protests that continue at the justices' homes. A guy has been arrested for plans to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh. Pro-abortion groups have declared literally, quote, open season on crisis pregnancy centers. There have been a number of attacks. Now, the FBI says it is investigating those attacks and those threats. The president this week signed a bill that will give more protection to justices' families. Are you satisfied that these threats, that these attacks are being handled properly?
No, I'm not. Because, Shannon, what we've seen is a deliberate attempt to isolate, demonize, and intimidate those justices considering signing Justice Alito's opinion, which everyone should read, by the way. It's fantastic. But as I predicted might be the case in my book, Saving Nine, that just came out a couple weeks ago, this would happen. They're trying to demonize them and intimidate them. The Justice Department has turned a blind eye to blatant violations of 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, the provision that prohibits people from showing up at the home of a Supreme Court justice to protest. And by not condemning those, by not prosecuting them, the Biden administration is propelling this and legitimizing the attacks.
Okay, we spent the top of the show talking about the economy with Brian Deese of the White House of the Biden administration. So I want to quickly ask you this. In a Washington Post article a couple weeks back, they said that even if Republicans get what they want, they don't have a plan for fighting inflation either. It says Republican politicians are instead fighting with Mickey Mouse, punishing immigrant children, complaining about fancy ice creams and Peloton, or otherwise waging culture wars. So if Republicans do regain the House and or Senate, is there a GOP plan to get the economy kicking again?
Yeah, look. My plan is simple. We need to focus on regulatory reform as the first order of business. That would help bring down inflation. We need to pass the REINS Act, which would make it so elected lawmakers, rather than unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats, are passing our laws. Most of our laws, measured by volume, weight, word length, economic impact, you name it, are currently made by unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. The REINS Act would fix that and bring down inflation.
All right, Senator Mike Lee, we will watch for the Supreme Court opinions again on Tuesday and Thursday this coming week. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shannon.